History with Mr. D. Hey there, welcome to part two. If you missed part one, it's playing right behind me right there. You should probably go back and watch that one. But hey, listen, picking up where we left off, following that battle of Bunker Hill, right? Don't fire till you see the whites of their eyes. The Continental Army had some momentum, right? Timing matters. Timing is important there. Most important thing is that from a tactical standpoint, even though the Patriots, the Continental Army, lost the battle by losing the field, they'd made a strong competitive statement. And by holding the British off the way that they did, they established a strong sense of hope and a belief that victory may be possible. So now was the time to strike. And here comes the Declaration of Independence.
Probably the most important advantage the colonists had was literacy. They could read, and it made the British angry. Quite honestly, though, the literacy rate did have a lot to do with this. You probably saw it in videos before, or I've mentioned to you that Ben Franklin, our first Postmaster General, was largely responsible for circulating newspapers throughout the colonies. We talked again about the Liberty Trees, where the colonists would hang lanterns in large, sturdy oak trees in the middle of the community square and discuss, using freedom of speech, the issues of the day. When Paul Revere engraved the Boston Massacre picture, it was circulated through all the newspapers. So listen, many scholarly critics and articles and experts agree that while it's difficult to pinpoint exactly, literacy rates in the New England colonies alone were around 95% in the year 1776, meaning 95% of people in the New England colonies could read at a high level in the year that the Declaration of Independence was signed into action. What does that mean? It means people could read, think critically, and understand what was being put in front of them. More simply stated, we had an educated population, and it helped us win the Revolutionary War. Think about that. Now, the other thing about this is that literacy enabled the colonists to publish newspapers and pamphlets, distribute them widely to a well-read populace, and disseminate information across all 13 of the colonies before correspondence could even reach the King of England. We had a 6-week advantage, a 6-week head start on the King of England. The Boston Massacre happened. 6 weeks went by before the King of England even knew about it. Why is that? Well, remember, it took a treacherous, dangerous, death-defying journey by boat across the Atlantic Ocean. See for yourselves.
We didn't die! We did!
All right. So, I mean, hey, if you've ever seen the Indiana Jones movies, you'll understand that little travel montage. That was very high tech. A lot of twine, popsicle sticks, and old project stuff laying around here. Hey, listen, honestly though, the time had come, all right? We had the tactical advantage, we had literacy, we had timing on our side, and we had a population that had been pushed to the limits. Remember, when we talked about all of the different invasions of privacy, the writs of assistance, the Sugar Act, the Townshend Acts, the tar and feathering of British tax collectors, people are being pushed to the brink. After the events in Boston and after the actual armed conflict, right, Lexington and Concord, Bunker Hill, the fight's on. So now we have to sit down and write an actual declaration. And like you, the assignment was given to somebody who really didn't want to go through the process. And by the way, let's talk about that process.
The process of writing the Declaration was not that easy. There were many additions, many subtractions, edits, proofreads. Jefferson was locked in a room in Philadelphia for months in the summertime, away from his family. And he hated it. He missed his family, and he didn't want to do the assignment in the first place. Sound familiar to you? But when this document was finished, it was submitted to Congress and finally approved by the signature process that you see below. Now, all 56 of these people's signatures are important, starting with the most prominent in the middle. All 56 of these individuals committed an act of high treason. And by signing their name on this paper, they were essentially signing their own death warrant.
You know, they say sometimes that the pen is mightier than the sword. Well, I don't know, but I'll tell you this. By taking the action of putting your name on a piece of paper that you knew if we lose this war, basically we just told the British who we are, what our last name is. We put everybody in danger, including ourselves and our families and our reputations, and they did it anyways. Think about that. When these people set aside all of those things, put themselves last and their country first, that's a pretty big commitment. And that at least demands your attention and your respect. You should think about what these people did, and you should think about the words that were said. You should also think about the potential that was left open to us. Now, put yourself in their position. And in fact, actually, put yourself in Thomas Jefferson's position. He didn't want to write this document, but he did. And he put himself into it. And like I said before, 30 days in a hot apartment, and he's got Ben Franklin and John Adams basically criticizing everything that he does. Have you ever written something that you honestly put effort into? You ever had a teacher, a professor, or a peer just rip through it like they don't even care, like they hate it? Hurts, doesn't it? It hurts when you put yourself into something. It hurts a little more when you actually care and actually put yourself into your work. I know I shouldn't take it personally when I get criticized as a teacher or a coach or a writer or whatever. But I take criticism to heart because I know how much of myself I put into the work, into the process, And for that to be criticized, it hurts. It's human nature. You take it personally. That's just part of being human. And that's the thing we have to remember is that the people who founded this country were human beings just like us. They might have dressed different, they might have talked a little different, but they were people just like you and me. And whether they wanted to admit it or not, and whether you want to admit it or not, they had feelings too. And I'll tell you what, Jefferson felt it.
No, that's not a picture of Big Ben Franklin's fantasy football draft party. That is a picture of, or a painting, I should say, of Ben Franklin, John Adams, and Thomas Jefferson in Philadelphia drafting that very Declaration of Independence. Now, while you're looking at these photos, I'd like to read to you something that I wrote on the 4th of July years back, but I think surmises how I feel about the Declaration of Independence and the process. So, here we go. When Thomas Jefferson finished writing the Declaration of Independence, he submitted it to Congress, believing he had written a nearly perfect document. 80 or so changes later, it was signed and adopted by Congress. Jefferson was crushed. He poured his soul into this declaration, and it was ripped apart by his colleagues. None of us are perfect, nor is our country. However, the concept by which this nation was born is perfect. We are all created equal, with inalienable rights. As time goes on, our concept of what is right changes, as do the laws of our great nation. It is never an easy process, but change is always inevitable. Remember, the colonists set aside their differences for the greater good, for the cause of freedom. They united and won their freedom against all odds. Remember to be the United States of America, not the divided States of America, this day and all days. Many great men and women poured their souls into this cause, this nation, for us.
There's really not too much more I can say in the words of Forrest Gump. That's all I have to say about that. But I do have to kind of bring a couple of things home for you. Before I do that, though, can you imagine, man, can you feel the stress? Like Jefferson's sitting there, and it's just almost like he's sitting there, like ready to just spontaneously combust. It's got to be frustrating, though, especially when you got so much at stake. You have so much emotion going on toward what you're doing. So think about that. Think about the emotion. Think about the human element of all of these things as you go forward. Last thing I want to talk about with you is there's 3 main ideas to the Declaration of Independence, all right? And they're on the screen behind me, but here they are, right? Number 1, we all have inalienable rights.
right? These are the natural rights that I talked about with you yesterday. These rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Those are expanded upon in our Bill of Rights, and they're still currently debated. Number 2, no taxation without representation. The colonists wanted a voice, and they were tired of not being heard. I'm sure every teenager in America can identify with having a voice and wanting to scream things from a mountaintop, but nobody's listening. That's how the colonists felt. They desperately wanted change. Nobody seemed to care enough to listen, okay? Don't tax us without our okay. Don't pass legislation without our opinions. That's what no taxation without representation can be surmised as. And 3, colonies are free from England. Henceforth, from now until forever, we have declared our independence from Great Britain. So step 1, own it. Step 2, win the war. Step 3, actually do the business of self-government. We got a lot to do in the next few weeks. Until then, thank you very much, and this has been
History with Mr. D.